American democracy, myth versus reality. First, the myth.
In democracy is you vote for a representative, right? And that representative, like a congressman or a congresswoman or whatever, you vote for a representative who then goes to the legislature and creates or makes the laws, right?
No, that's wrong. What you just described is totalitarian democracy. Totalitarian democracy, or anarcho-monarchism, refers to a system of government in which the lawfully elected representatives maintain the integrity of a nation-state whose citizens, while granted the right to vote, have little or no participation in the decision-making process of the government. Unfortunately, this is the type of democracy that the USA has today. However, it is not the type of democracy which exists by law in America. Rather, this was a hijacking of the individual nation-states by the GOP and the Democratic Party after the peoples of each nation-state ratified the Constitution in 1787 through 1789. By law, however, each American state is a separate nation-state unto itself that is supremely ruled by its respective people, its voting citizens under direct democracy. This is a historical fact. In adopting the Constitution, the peoples, that is, the voters of each separate nation-state, overruled their respective government to elect state convention delegates to decide whether or not their state would secede from the Articles of Confederation and ratify the Constitution. Accordingly, in adopting the Constitution, the peoples of each state asserted themselves as the supreme national authority over the respective nation-state in 1787 through 1789. However, the people of each state did not authorize their state conventions to unite their state with other states to form a single new nation-state, as the federal government currently claims. Nor does the Constitution do so in its plain text. However, both would be required if the Constitution were indeed to have united the nation-states as a single new nation-state, called the United States of America. Rather, each state remained a separate nation-state unto itself, and the respective state's people, that is, its voters, remained the supreme power therein. Therefore, each state remained a separate nation-state, each of which is a national direct democracy. And in this way, each state remained a separate nation-state, but each such nation was now wholly owned by its respective voters, who were therefore the supreme authority therein to rule their state however they chose, and they chose to adopt the Constitution as their form of government. And in this way, the Constitution achieved the self-evident truths by which the Founding Fathers declared independence from Great Britain in 1776, saying that with the immortal words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying at its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness." Meanwhile, fear-mongering claims of direct democracy being mob rule are immensely overstated. In a true democracy, the people remain sovereign individuals who simply delegate their individual choices to the state. However, they only collectively own the land on which the nation exists. They do not surrender their inalienable freedoms to form a collabstract. That is, they did not own the people themselves, whose basic rights are held to be inalienable, and therefore the minority are free to leave the nation-state at any time if they disagree with the majority in its choice of final authority. That is, in other words, they are still free to vote with their feet if they so choose. Likewise, contrary to some claims, a direct democracy does not require that the people vote on every single government act or law. But on the contrary, since they are the final authority in their nation-state, they have the supreme power to delegate certain functions to subordinate agents in government as they choose. And accordingly, under direct democracy, the people or the voters in each state established a republican form of government, both in the common federal government among the individual states, as well as the state government among the individual citizens in each state. However, these governments were simply subordinates to whom the voters delegated certain powers, while the voters themselves retained supreme final authority over their respective nation-state. So, to avoid corruption by the government, the people of each state simply delegated powers to the state and federal governments under the Constitution to act on their behalf as their subordinate agent. Therefore, the USA was not a national republic, but only an international federal republic of 13 separate sovereign nations, which were also direct democracies. Only the state governments were republican. However, the people, that is, the voters in each state, held final authority over both state and federal government, and they could overrule their state government or their federal government by popular vote in state convention, just as they did in ratifying the Constitution in the first place. So in conclusion, direct democracy isn't just a good idea, it's the law, and it needs to be reestablished immediately, since now we see that the federal government is simply a rogue installation that seized power under false pretenses during the Lincoln years, and thus the truth has been buried by that administration ever since. For this reason, I encourage all Americans to get together with the people in your respective state and sign a petition to the International Court of Justice to recognize your state's long-standing status as a separate sovereign nation, but which is also a direct democracy, as has legally existed for every state from 1783 onward. The petition should read as follows. We, the people of the sovereign nation-state of, and say the name of your state, do formally petition the International Court of Justice for official recognition of our state's long-standing legal status as a directly democratic sovereign nation-state under the 1783 Treaty of Paris, retroactively dating to the Declaration of Independence of 1776, any historical suppressions of the fact of this status notwithstanding. This should then be sent to the address shown here. It will only take the petitions of the people of one state in order to compel the International Court of Justice to take action and examine the matter, and act accordingly as the law requires, in order to hopefully recognize each state's long-standing national sovereignty as a separate nation-state under international law.